I dva odlična gosta, dvije legende, Kai Alce i DJ Gard. S njima ćemo se družiti kroz ova 2 dana. Nešto kasnije večeras u klubu Super Super, a sada ovdje u studiju kod Ilije. Hello Kai.
Hey, how you doing?
Just
Hey,
you'll have to use the mic as a real rapper. So Kai, we met like 2 years ago, a year and a half.
Yes.
You were in Zagreb for the first time, I think.
Yeah, so thanks to Ilya. Let's say thank you to him one more time for having us again here today.
How do you remember that time in Zagreb?
Oh, it was great because it was eye-opening. You know, I have been to Croatia before, but only for the big festivals like Pula and whatnot. So this was the first time going to a city and getting to hang out with the residents, you know, the people that live here, not so much tourists or whatever. And so the party was off the hook. It was great. It was a good party. Nice club, like 2 or 3 floors there. So it turned out really nice.
Did you have any picture about Croatia before you came? What do you imagine? How was it like here?
No, I had no idea what it would be like. So yeah, so it was totally just a brand new experience. Yes.
So to introduce you to the viewers, you come from USA. You're living in Atlanta.
I do.
But you were born in New York.
Correct. So I was born in New York. Then we moved to Detroit, and I kind of grew up in. That's where I met like all my Detroit roots and all of that. And then I moved to Atlanta, and I was able to kind of use what I learned from New York and Detroit to kind of build a scene for myself in the city in Atlanta.
Let's talk a bit about your early age in Brooklyn. And
actually, I grew up in Queens.
In Queens, okay.
Yes.
How was it back then? It was
so you know, it was disco was the main thing going on, and it was also at that time hip hop was becoming what it was going to become.
We're talking what year?
70s.
70s,
yeah.
Okay.
And then so we left New York in 81, and then I moved to Detroit. So by the time I moved to Detroit, it was sort of like the beginnings, or you know, disco, and was ever starting to transfer into kind of progressive music. So we were in Detroit, at least, we were very heavily influenced by like the Italio disco kind of stuff. In between that and, you know, the birth of house music out of Chicago, and then soon after that, the birth of techno in Detroit. I was just kind of there for that whole kind of culmination, as well as I was able to go back to New York because I was visiting relatives and whatnot, and I would be able to go to like parties, you know, at some of the old clubs like Robots and Save the Robot in the World and Sound Factory, you name it. So I was because of my upbringing, I was able to go back and see places that were also very integral in what we now know as house. Yeah.
Obviously, what influences music a lot is also economical situation in some country, political situation. It was totally different back then.
Correct. So even so, funny enough, in Detroit, although it was like murder capital, there were a lot of people living very well there. But you definitely had a bad side to it that, you know, if you engaged in that, you know, that's what you saw. And just having to live around that and to navigate through, living within that, yeah, I think a lot of angst and, you know, that kind of music kind of had to find a place for itself, and not only the music but the people, you know, like we had to find a place that was, you know, for ourselves.
So especially Detroit as a motor city. With big car companies back then. When did it all start to fall apart, and did it make an impact on the whole scene?
Okay, so the scene itself in Detroit, I think, it itself started to die in the, you know, maybe mid 90s, I would say. You know, because people who were there showcasing it, like let's say Derek May and the big DJs, they started traveling a lot, so they weren't there to like nurture the sound as much as maybe they should have. And then with the onslaught of, the car companies losing a lot, just it was just dire moments. But then there was always a strong core underground that still survived.
Did it
Now,
bring more youth to the clubs because of it, or?
well, now, so I think that's happening now. So,
Mhm.
um, because Detroit's kind of on an upswing, car companies, of course, are not as large as they were, but um, Detroit is it's one of those like unfortunate but fortunate thing. Uh, the gentrification of it is like America is moving to Detroit. So you got people that are from California who are just like up and moving. I'm going to move to Detroit. You got people from New York who are doing it as well. Um, so it's brought a new energy to the city, but can we have to see, can the energy or can the city keep its own identity first, and then that energy feeds into it, or will it become something different?
You were saying hip hop was big back then.
That was in New York, so hip
Okay,
hop was becoming big in New York, and so
what's the difference? Why wasn't it big in Detroit?
oh, I don't know. I mean, it
Obviously,
had its scene, but I don't think it was as large as just the normal kind of dance music scene, especially in the '80s. Um, so things like Run DMC and all that kind of stuff didn't overcast the dance scene that was going on in Detroit. Now that's different, definitely. By the time the '90s came around, of course, like in everywhere else, hip hop totally taking over.
hmm
Um, but also then Detroit has always had its own little underground hip hop scene. Jay Dilla, of course, and Slum Village and all those kind of things. So there was always hip hop there, but we just never had that, and a lot of people doing it, or should I say, a lot of people that became famous doing it.
hmm You grew up in a house listening to jazz records.
Correct. So my father was a big
Mhm.
jazz audio hi-fi guy. Macintosh sound system. Thorns turntable, all that kind of stuff. So he's very much like a hi-fi guy, audiophile, but he would just sit and listen to jazz.
Mhm.
So that's where my appreciation for that came from.
I read somewhere you had an uncle that wanted you to play piano.
Correct.
So
So
what happened
I
with
had an
that?
uncle who classical
hmm
pianist. Um, yeah, he just I could have learned from him. But yeah, I don't know. I was more interested in just listening, and then I think as I got older and became a teenager and got into DJ, I always felt there was just a need of trying to promote the music that I wanted to play and push that as opposed to making the music.
hmm
Now that I am making music, I'm kicking myself in the butt, hoping that I wish I did learn some music
hmm
from. Yeah,
So before the whole DJ producer era, you went to college and you wanted to study in New York, if I'm right.
correct.
But then your father said
No,
no.
so I was already going in high school. I was already going back to New York, like partying and stuff like that.
hmm
So when I got accepted to NYU, he was like, "Yeah, nah, I'm not paying for that." So um, my other choices were like Howard or Morehouse. So I ended up going to Morehouse, which is in Atlanta, and yeah, here
So
I
your
am now.
father thought you will party less if you move
Uh,
to the different city.
I don't think he thought I partied less. He just knew that I wouldn't have the same access to partying in these other cities as I did in New York.
And what happened then?
Uh, so I went. I mean, I went to school and I stayed the path for a little while. Um, but I would say somewhere, um, Ted Patterson. Well,
hmm
I say this all again. There's a guy named Ted Patterson and a guy named Ron Pullman, and they kind of were the ones who kind of top playing some dance music in Atlanta. And both of those guys left one year, like I don't know, 92, 93. And Ted Patterson went to New York. Ron Pullman, I think, went back to Denver or something like that. And so there was sort of like this empty space of like no one really engaged in that. So I had a friend of mine who was he was sort of the promoter that helped those guys kind of do some parties. So when he was getting ready to do party, he actually gave me my chance, and I kind of just stuck with that. And I was one person that kind of in Atlanta, if you saw me, you knew I was playing house music. Like that's what I did, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned in the interview we did 2 years ago, it was only in the gay clubs in Atlanta.
Correct,
Then?
primarily, you
Yeah.
know. So the other guy, Ron Pullman, he would play for some of the college parties by way of my friend who was the promoter, and Ted Patterson was the one who kind of played for, like, I guess what you would consider yuppies, you know, now, or hipsters now.
Yeah.
And so so it was two different scenes. So when they left, I'd actually worked at a gay club called Tracks. So I kind of had this like following from some of the gay club I had following from college, and because I used to hang out on the scene where Ted Patterson and but I also, so when I started to DJ myself, I gathered a little bit from each of those scenes, and a lot of them are still with me. Some of them, yeah.
So obviously there was no internet back then. And, how was it with finding new music and getting influences from the other cities?
So luckily there were two stores. There were like actually three stores back then that kind of catered to that dance music. One was Let the Music Play. Another one was called Edie's Gourmet. And then there's a store called Wax and Facts. Kind of sold everything, used vinyl, but they would always get these promos from all the New York labels and whatnot. So I'd go there and grab the promos, and then eventually Satellite opened a store there, which was in the later '90s, and I started working there. So I was like the connection to all the deep house labels or whatnot in Atlanta, you know, and especially from Detroit, you know. So everybody from Detroit knew that like I could buy, so I buy records and stock their records in the store. So yeah, that was where my connection came in with that.
So since you were working in a record store, do you know how the distribution worked back then? How the whole process was running?
Yeah, but back then it was more stringent.
Was there phone calls or what?
On the phone, as far as like distribution.
Yeah.
So funny enough, most people were kind of like tight on. So there were only a few. So it was like One Stop. There was Watts. There were these certain big distribution companies that would then take a bunch of different labels and then distribute them to other places. But a lot of times it was hard to get one of those guys to pick you up. And then with that, you know, so many stores only bought from those distribution companies. They rarely would buy from a person. So back then it was actually a little, I would assume, as much as it was easier because you're selling much more numbers in records, it was harder for the smaller guy to get in, because unless somebody, you know, gave him the link or hooked him up, most of those big distributors, it was very hard to get them to be interested in your record. So nowadays, because there aren't these big distribution companies, you start a record and you know where to send them, and it's a good record, people will buy it.
Yeah. So you worked at the record store while you were at the studies?
Yes.
Yeah. How did that work?
No, not. I think I was already finished. I was finished with school by the time I started at Satellite.
You studied psychology, right?
I did study psychology.
Did your dad tell you, now find yourself a job?
He's always for a little while, but he gave up on that. You know, now they're totally supportive of what I do now.
Okay, so tell me a story about your Detroit period of time.
The Detroit period. Let's see if I can think of a good story. You should have prepped me, you know. I mean, all of it was good. I mean, even also the first time that I went to the Music Institute was actually on I think if I'm correct, on a Wednesday night. But we went to go see Farley Jackmaster Funk.
Okay, for the guys that don't know about Music Institute, can you do a
all right, so Music Institute
that?
is probably like our Detroit's legendary club. You know, it rivals up against, you know, the Garage or Chicago's Music Box or Sound Factory. That was our pinnacle, as well as it was the place where Derek May would test out brand new music. Shay Damier as well. On Saturdays they're playing edits and all types of crazy stuff that they were getting their hands on. So it was Music Institute is like again, Detroit's was like one of its most pinnacle clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started, I had a chance to start working there when I was quite young. I think I was 15, 16 years old. So I went to go see Farley, and again, it was on a Wednesday night, and one of the owners from Music Institute, he was out trying to get customers to come to Music Institute on the weekend, and George Baker, and so he passed out some flyers like, "Come check out my new space, la la la."
Mm-hmm.
So we went there after we went to see Farley. Went there that night, just to check it out. I was like, okay, that's cool. That night he said, Shay says, well, look, Tuesday we're having, hiring. Come back Tuesday. So we went back Tuesday, and they hired me like coat check guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, from that point on, I kind of just got intertwined into that whole world. Not that I wasn't already, because I was already going to like house parties in and around Detroit. But definitely just those times there at Music Institute. So let's see, a good time. So there was no alcohol in the club. And so this one particular night, I think whatever we had bought, we'd already drank.
Okay.
And so after 2, you can't buy any more alcohol. And I think right at maybe 10 minutes before 2 o'clock, the guys from Depeche Mode come in with Derek May, because I think Derek May was playing at the concert.
Okay.
And the guys come in, and it's like, no alcohol. They just, they were like, so I had to run to like a liquor store and, bang on the door. They're like,
in the middle of the night.
I got to get one more bottle. And so bring them back some drinks. But yeah, that was one. Yeah, that was one of the crazy nights there. And they actually had some good theme parties. So, I think one time they had a beach party,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought all this sand in there, which was aesthetically cool, but that sand never left.
Never left the club.
It seemed like I was sand in the club from that point on forever.
Yeah.
Another time, I think they raked leaves in the club for like a Halloween Thanksgiving party, and they had a coffin inside. So it was. It only lasted for roughly about a year and 8 months, and not even 2 years. And
what happened?
Well, everybody just started, I think, getting too busy. So Derek May started to fly out more. Shay Damier's career started to take off, and then of course, like every band, they start arguing and stuff like that. So everybody kind of just went their ways. It was just the way of the beast.
Do you maybe have a record from that period of time we could play?
That I could play.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't think I brought any records that old with me.
Or something.
But I definitely have records at home that are test pressings from that day or from that era.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what I got that's old like that. Well, matter of fact, I may have one of the Music Institute. So in 2008, I did like a Music Institute series, which I went to all of those artists, Derek, Shay, everyone, and just asked them, did they have any music from back then that they had not released? And everybody had something. Like you can see here that they probably can't see it on there, but that was like a graphic that was on the wall inside of the Music Institute. I'm looking for the other one. I can play that. There we go. You want to play it? There?
Yeah, let's play it. It's the left one. For today. Is this going to be played also in the night.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
So also the idea when I did the Music Institute, because I was just I was new in the label, I didn't have a lot of money, so the idea was to get all these guys to give me the music, but not so much utilize their names, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So all these records, it was 3 volumes. I never announced
It was unknown.
who the
Yeah.
artists were, but I'll give you a hint right now that was Shay Damier.
Okay.
Yeah, so
He was a big influence in you, right?
very huge
Mm-hmm.
influence. Like
Like a mentor.
yeah, like a mentor, definitely. If
Can you describe your relationship with Shea?
it was like my brother, you know. And funny enough, by way of like cousins, we were cousins, you know. And very funny. Like one of my cousins married one of his cousins.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so you know, and we've I just spoke to him the other day, so we've kept a friendship, you know, since then, you know, and yeah, he's always been encouraging. Um, just by what they did when they did prescription, he really taught me on just how to put out music. Excuse me, and just always being open to it all. So as people can see with NDATL, I've put out some techie stuff. I've put out some vocal stuff. I've put out in the middle of the road. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and I just try to put out music that exemplifies what I mean when I say deep. When I say house, when I want it to be this, and everything I put out, I think is a true example of that. And I try to put out stuff that you could buy it now or you could buy it later, but it's always going to be playable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that's going to be made for today or for this time. I try to make things that are made for that right time, which could be any time.
Mm-hmm. When you came to the Music Institute, you were very young. You said 15, 16?
Yes.
So, what did the guys say? Okay, here's this kid, and why did they take you under their wings?
Well, because I was already, I had my own turntables and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Shay,
Did
I
you
don't
have to
know.
prove yourself in a way, or what?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, now in hindsight, so I remember like Shay would like, he would. So all the DJs had their records at the Music Institute. So this is Derek, Alton, Shay, D. Win, a guy named Chuck Roper. Most of their records stayed there at the club, and so when I would get off school, a lot of times I would go downtown because we used to do this. Funny enough, with this other guy named Sean, we used to do these like teen reports. So we would report on this high school won such and such basketball team, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was downtown, close to where the Music Institute was. So usually I would go and do that little team report on the radio, and then go to the Music Institute. And Shay would make me go through the records and listen to them and write down whatever record I liked off of it, if I liked any,
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, I'm not going to tell you what the records are. I want to see what songs you like from them. So I would go through all these guys' records, at the Music Institute, just listen to them, the ones I liked, I listened to, whatever. Or sometimes I just put it on, have a couple beers and just sit back and listen to music. And yeah, and I remember yeah, it's funny. I wish I had that pad now, but I had a pad and I just write down like, oh, okay, on this album I like this record, on this album I like this, or I like this 12-inch, and I kind of kept that. And eventually that was also the same list that, because a lot of these records I may not have had, that was the same list that I ended up going out and searching for as I was building my collection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did you start that?
Oh, again, that would have been like 16. Yeah.
And was it the problem with money? Well, obviously, as a kid, you don't have much.
Yeah. So, yeah, but the records were a lot cheaper then too. Yeah, I mean, I've been known to go to the record store and buy records with so they were like $5. I could clearly remember going to buy like some Mantronics record with 500 pennies. So, and I had like an allowance with my parents. So, I think I was able to suffice my record habit then, I don't remember having to ask my parents all the time, like, Mom, can I get $20 so I go buy a record? And the records, again, they weren't $20, they were $5. And then some of them, again, a lot of the records I was looking for were already old, so they were used records. And so back then, you don't have Discogs now. You don't have, the only record I remember back then that was expensive was a Martin Circus, Disco Circus. So like in Detroit, easily $100. Like at a record store, so like let's say a commercial record store, like I guess like a Target, where every other record is $8.99, $7.99, whatever. Like. If they got 10 copies of this Martin Circus, they charged $100 for it. They just knew that it was just that, because it was, for some reason it was hard to get in Detroit. It was so yeah. These things kind of like now and today, how I know how the business runs. Yeah, I think it was a sort of like a scam. It was almost like they were doing it on purpose. Like, yeah, so a record like that would just be totally. So, again, so buying records wasn't really detrimental to my pocket. I could survive. Because again, you're buying a used record for $2-3. So you got $20, you got 10 records. So. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to accumulate what I needed. The records that were expensive were the ones that were new. Actually.
So when did you start producing? You spent a lot of time with those guys at their studios. You picked up some things there, probably.
Correct. So back then, because I wasn't very that wasn't my focus, was trying to produce. When I was around Kevin and watching Derek and all and Shay and them make music. I learned a few things, just how to work the machines maybe, but I never really tried to attempt to make any music. If they had some music, maybe I might have done like my own mixes and stuff like that. So on one of these music institutes, or actually maybe on one of Deep Detroit, you'll hear some unreleased mixes that I'd done for Shay way back then, but they just recently came out because I put them on these compilations or whatever. But I never concentrated on making my own music. Then I went to school, then the DJing thing started, and then so it wasn't until maybe late 90s when I was just like, I should be trying to make this music.
It was already in Atlanta or still?
I was in Atlanta,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, I bought MPC, a Juno, and a Mackie board. And then started making some tracks. Yeah.
I read somewhere you also sold cassettes.
Yes, I did. But so that was early 90s when I was in Atlanta. So like I said, with Ted Patterson, who was kind of playing to that yuppie. There was a guy who owned a record store, or a clothing store actually, named Bill Hallman. So all the club kids and all that kind of stuff would kind of go to his store to buy that kind of clothing or whatever. So I worked out a deal with him. I was like, "Yo, you mind if I sell cassettes?" And he was like, "Yeah, whatever. Give me $1." I think I had to give him like $1 per cassette that I sold. I thought I sold them for like $10.
What kind of cassettes were there?
Oh, just mixes, house mixes that I was making.
Okay.
So I would just make these house mixes, yeah, and I would sell them. I was literally like, so the covers of the CDs or the cassettes, it was my handwriting, and then I Xerox copied them, and
the track list.
We'll have the cutout, for each tape, put it in there. Yeah, and I sold them.
No tax added.
No, and then so there was no email then. So I'm trying to think if I had like my phone number on there. I can't remember what the contact was on there. I think maybe they probably had to ask the guy, how to get in touch with me, because I don't think I would have wanted to just put my number on anything. And then I don't know. I'd have to remember, but definitely it was cool because it was like one of those little cases. Maybe we held like 10 cassettes. I was sitting right by the register, and I come in and put 10. And some days I'd put one out there, and the next day he'd call me like, "Yo, you need to come by and bring me more." So yeah, that worked out, and I think that also expanded my my following within that kind of in that yuppie crowd was because they were buying the cassettes from there. So yeah, I did that for a while.
So when you moved to Atlanta, there wasn't a big scene,
No, not
obviously.
at all. Not at all.
You kind of started it.
Yeah, it definitely helped because I was probably one of the first people that started to bring DJs from other places, down to Atlanta. Again, people, it's always hard to say when you started something, but I definitely felt like I was just a conductor. Like when I got there, I brought more attention to what was going on there. Whereas like somebody like Chet Patterson, he left because he was just like he felt that it was stunting his growth. He's like I could be much bigger and better if I moved to New York. And
Did it happen?
yeah, it did happen. so he was right. But I felt like I had already lived in New York. I didn't want to move back to. I knew what New York was about, and then also at that time, again, I was on my parents' dime, so I had to stay at. My father was like, "Yeah, if I'm going to be paying for you to live, you're going to be going to school." We wanted, I would assume that if I would have decided to go to New York and not go to school, he probably would not have paid for it. So, yeah, so I always was like, well, all right, little school, get my money paid, and I could do what I want, and I could do it here. I stayed there, and then again, it worked out. It worked out for me, because.
So it was a new thing. How did the crowd react? What was happening in the city?
Again, so it wasn't like no one again because those guys were playing house music. It was just for myself, or that I just focused on that. So if you heard me DJing, that's what I played. Where other DJs, if they played house music, they might have also played hip hop or played R&B music, or just kind of gave that amalgam all the music, Michael Jackson and all that stuff. And not saying that I don't play Michael Jackson, but yeah, I'm not going to give you that full-on kind of commercial vibe. I'm going to give you more of this deep house sound that I want to promote and be a part of, and that's what I focused on when people hired me, or because people come and party and be like, "Oh man, we had such a great time." I want to hire you for my party. And I'm like, I would be clear play hip hop because any party you go to, people more like gonna remind you, you can't play no hip hop, man. You can't, which I understand. I know what I want to do, and that's what I set out to do. Now, at some of those parties, I would just say, but if you want some hip hop, I would just charge them more, pay a friend of mine, be like, yo. I need you to come and play like an hour hip hop.
Okay.
So I've done parties for like Shaq and Madonna. But like, all right, so I did a party for like Madonna in a place called what was that? Velvet. It was a place where I usually played every Thursday, and I think maybe like on a Saturday night she came in the club with like her little entourage, and they had like a room upstairs. From the downstairs, so of course she wanted to be with her little crew upstairs.
What year was that?
92, 93, yeah. And so the owner was like, because there was no one up there DJing, I was like, yo, I need you to go and like get some music to play for it. And I don't know what happened, but anyway, I ended up just playing a tape, very heavily Sound Factory influence. Which that's where she was hanging out at the time. So, yeah, I remember them having a good time. I think Dennis Rodman was there. It was like that Human Nature tour or whatever. So, yeah, and yeah, so I've played for a bunch of different people in different times. But again, a lot of times I just always try to be. Back then, I was always clear on what I wanted to focus on.
You mentioned Thursdays, but you also did parties on Tuesdays.
Oh, yeah, Tuesdays. So Tuesdays, that was a place called Oxygen. So that was after that place, Velvet. So for those that know Atlanta, there used to be an area called Buckhead. And Buckhead was like, I guess, like a Bourbon Street. It was just maybe 20 to 30 clubs easily on like a 2-block radius. But on Tuesday night, we played this place called Oxygen. And we're playing house music the night went from like 10 to like 4 in the morning. So 10 to like midnight or something like that. It used to be always a different DJ, just kind of playing everything from R&B to reggae to disco, and then in the other room, it was like a little trio, like a drummer, a bass player, maybe a keyboard player, and for some odd reason, I think maybe one of the promoters might have been cool with some of the guys, but we'd always have like these famous hip hop rappers would just come in and just start rapping. So the Tuesday night at this place was like, we'd have a line down the block, and it just totally made that whole area kind of just burst into a whole nother thing. Like, and again, by the end, it was like definitely 20, 30 different clubs, bars, whatever in this little area. But eventually, so again, this is where like commercialism messes everything up. So it was like a football player.
Mm-hmm.
He was there with some of his friends. They get in a fight. They stab somebody, and then it was a whole like, oh, we have to close this area down. It's dangerous. La la la.
So house music was dangerous.
Oh, well, not house music, just the street. So what we started, hip hop and commercialism messed it up. And yeah, so when I look back in those times, it was they were quite fun, and like it was I can remember playing like the biggest song, or one of the biggest songs was a Norma Jean Bell, "I'm the Baddest Bitch in the Room," and like you'd have, because Atlanta's a city of strippers, so we'd have all the strippers in there. So like when that song came on, they would just go crazy, and and these are people who they could care less about house music, but they were just into it on that evening. They were like, "Oh no, that's Oxygen Tuesday night," and it's I learned something about trying to always make sure people know your name, because people then only knew me kind of as that DJ, and I used to have like a lot of hair then, and so people would just always kind of recognize me because I had a lot of hair, but no one ever knew my name. And I'm like, oh, that's that DJ. So when Oxygen closed down, I kind of lost my momentum because people didn't know who I was. So it wasn't like, oh, they could be like, oh, well, where's Kai playing? Because they didn't know who I was. So after that, that's when I started to make more of a concerted effort to make sure people know what my name was.
You were the first one bringing DJs from all the other cities, like Yesh, Rontrant.
So I was one of bringing them to Atlanta. Again, the one promoter before me that kind of put me on, Samir, he brought some of the guys because he was from New York, New Jersey area. So he might have brought like DJ Disciple, some of those kind of DJs to Atlanta. But then I was first one. Shay was, I think Shay might have been my first. We brought Shay, we brought Ron, Steve Silk Hurley. And then from that point on, it just, all my friends, Jovan, Pevin Everett, Kerry Chandler. Yeah, we were like the first. I was like the guy who kind of brought everybody to Atlanta for their first time. If you were a deep house guy in America, your introduction to Atlanta was probably through me.
Maybe we could take a listen to another record.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe some of the guys you mentioned.
Some of the guys. Let's see what we have. This is a remix. It's a remix coming out on my friend People of Earth, his record label. Somebody I always wanted to work with, which was Omar, a UK singer. So by way of Bodhisattva, and Omar.
Okay.
So Omar is a singer. Bodhisattva was the original producer. Alton does a remix, and now I also did a remix. So we'll see. Let's listen.
Let's listen.
to sink in the soaking rain no more. I'm sure. Give me that love that helps it bring me to my life once more, Mom. It's my soul. So I've got to be your lover, be your lover. Oh, that's why I'm dedicated to you. Yeah, yeah. Take it, my love, please don't take it like me. I chose you, lady, please don't make it right, please. Take it, my love, please don't take it like me. I chose you, lady, please don't make it right, please. How can a swan go on if he loses his partner's way? There's nothing else to do but try to go and do his thing. He may drop in the line, but it's hard without your name. Baby, I need your love to give me strength. There's no debate. Yeah. Benefit is take it, my love, please don't take it like me. I chose you, lady, please don't make it right, please. Take it, my love, please don't take it like me. I chose you, lady, please don't make it right, please. Get on down, sing it up, get on down, sing it down, get on down, sing it up, get on down, get on down, sing it up, get on down, sing it up, get on down, sing it up, get on down.
Booty Man, Shade on Me, Jordan Field, Ted Patterson. Like, yeah, the names just go on and on because we did that every Saturday for about 10 years. Great, like, yeah, the memories and the energy that went on in there was amazing. I've yet to see that duplicated. But anyway, that in about 2006, I think the store closed around 2006. So that was like a lull, again, in dance music, or at least underground dance music. So that's when I kind of really concentrated on working on the label. Got the label up and running around 2008. Um, Also, still not a great time for records at the time, but the fact that I could sell X amount of records during that time, felt like, okay, I'm on the right track, and put out a few couple other original records. And I think my first record that I used another artist was Comedic Just. It was like my fourth or fifth record, which kind of brings me around to today. I'm putting out my 25th record. 20, of course, I put out some other ones, but most of those are like special releases. So I think all in totality, I may have put out about 40 records. But as official releases on NDATL, my 25th, and it's another Comedic Just record. And it's amazing. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have it on vinyl. The test pressings are actually in Atlanta. My friend, I had him because I'm not there, so it was like, yo, I got to get this record out. So he went to the house and listened to it, proved it, put the order in. So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to getting this one out. But you will hear it tomorrow or tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
So how do you pick when do you release a record? Do you have a strict plan? Okay, 4 records a year, or
no? Because there's no way of having a strict plan in this game. Because you're kind of at the whim of the plants. You're at the whim of who's mad. Yeah. So you can't. I mean, some people maybe do. I don't. And I wouldn't. I put it out as I see fit. Fortunately, as every time when I think like, oh man, do I have something new to put out, like something good? Somebody comes out of the blue and I got something good. So I'm actually got some things coming from a girl named Roberta. Fingers crossed, I got something coming from Mr. G. Got records from 2 vocalists that I've already put out before, Cayenne and Miranda Cole. So it's not a shortage of good music. I got which has been delayed as well. So like that's why it says can't have like a strict thing. Putting out something with Ed 9 from out of Chicago. Yeah, there are a few things happening over in the ATL.
So what do you think about the whole trend of recreated sound of 90s today?
Well, as long as you do it with some integrity, I don't mind. So I guess, funny enough, this guy named Garrett David, he did a 12-inch recently called Queen Tracks, which is dope. And it definitely has that 90s, bump. Yeah, as long as as long as you're doing it interestingly, I got no issues with it.
But I read somewhere you don't like to listen to your old records much.
So old records, like, I don't know. So what it is like a record will have to come out and get a little old before I tend to maybe really appreciate it. So things that maybe that actually do well, in the public, it might take me 2 years, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that record is kind of good, and I start playing it. Whereas, don't get me wrong, when I'm testing the album, most of the time I'm playing the records, but once I finally decide, okay, it's coming out and it's tight or whatever, I tend to not play it as much, it seems that, and then usually after a while, I'll be like, oh, all right, that record's actually all right.
You also speak very highly about Larry Heard.
He's the GOAT. I mean, I always try to explain to people, there's no one in this game has effectively made the craziest kind of acid offbeat, track and work. And then at the same time can make What About This Love? No one, there's not a producer in this game that can wear that badge, you know, flawlessly. Like, and these, you know, he had many examples, you know, in that crazy, you know, from acid to just like, what is this, you know? And then can put something, you know, nice and easy listening as "What About This Love" or I know, "Glancing at the Moon." I don't know. You know, and then go to "Sun Can't Compare" and like, yeah, without a, you know, there's no character change. There's no he's trying to do that. It is, you know. And again, there's no one in the house game that definitely people got maybe may have had a better track or on the harder side, but they ain't never made nothing really cool and soft.
Mm-hmm.
They made some other people that made some cooler, dope songs and "What About This Love," but they ain't never made, you know, "Acid Attack."
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, yeah.
So you lived in New York, Detroit, Atlanta.
Mm.
Have you been planning moving to Chicago to make it all?
No. So because I partied enough in Chicago as well.
Mm.
If I move from Atlanta, I'm moving out the country. Yes. I'm out of there.
So where would you move?
I don't know, man. Maybe South America.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, for business, it doesn't work because, you know, your business is in the States and in Europe. So if I'm in South America, you know, it's just longer plane rides. So, you know, and that's cool.
So when you started, it was all a community thing, right? But these days, how does the community in Atlanta support the scene? And is it more commercial? Is it more business?
We had a little bit of everything, you know. So, you know, you definitely have like the bigger clubs like called Ravine and District. They do like the EDM type of stuff.
Okay.
But I mean, I know them, and if I need to get into one of those parties, like, I'm cool with them. Like, yeah, there's no like kind of like necessary competition. It's just different venues that, like, you know, these people like this, and people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think it has its benefits and it has its downfalls. Because at one point in time, I guess in the early, it seemed like everybody used to party together, you know. And then I guess that made it a little harder for the DJ because you know, back then you did have to understand you got to play a little harder for a certain time. You got to play a little softer for a different time. You know, you have to kind of learn to make everyone. But now everybody's kind of found their little. I like minimal house, or I like this, I like that. So, you know, it is what it is.
So what's happening with the house in a park?
House in the Park is just going great and strong, stronger than we'd ever thought it would. Shout out to Ramon Rousseau, which is like definitely the founder, and I just was right there along with him, so I'm the co-founder with him. But 15 years now. And we've only, you know, first 13 was always free.
Mm-hmm.
So it was only 14 and 15 that we actually started charging. But it's grown so fast. Well, it grew really fast, and then it stayed really strong. And, like, it's still strong as far as, like, the vibe and the essence of what it gives to the people in the community. Like, people ride, you know, just feel better about themselves for a good long time after that. Everybody's like, and when people see each other after that, they're like, "Oh man, I had such a good time." You know, did you have a good time? You know, so yeah, to see that, you know, now almost 15,000 people come once a year to Atlanta, and it's not even about. So what I was trying to say, most people don't even know all of us on stage. I'd say 80% of people know us, but each person in each little crew may only know one of us. Like, oh, I know Kai. The other one might say, oh, I know Ramon. The other one say, I know Kemet. I know Salah. And people are not really concerned about who is DJing. They just know that the vibe is going to be right, you know? And, you know, they may learn a new DJ, but they'll be like, you know, oh, that's who that is, you know? So It's been great that we've been able to cultivate something based on the sound and not us. You know, it's called House in the Park, and that's what it is. It's
Mhm.
and we've had getting arguments with people around the country because people all of a sudden want to do now House in the Park, because it's such a basic name, yes, but now people know us from here. You're asking me about House in the Park, and you're asking about House in the Park in Atlanta. You're not asking about House in the Park in New York.
Mhm.
It's not one. Chicago's got chosen few, which is way larger than ours. And yeah, it's amazing to see that we have coined not only that simple phrase, but once you go, you'll understand that it has a feeling behind it as well.
Mhm. You have a big record collection, like 10,000 or more.
About
Uh,
10,000, I would say.
Is there a record you don't have and you would like to have, and it's
Oh,
impossible to get?
there's always tons of records. There's always tons of records you want. There you got some of them new, some of them old. I think at the moment, let's see. Let's see. A record that's on my want list would be like maybe there's like some Joe Clausel Missy a record, but it's more for listening. It's not like once I get it, I'm gonna start playing in the club. It's just one of those records like, oh yeah, I want that record just to play it.
And what are your sure shots for the night?
Sure shot.
Like 3 records you would use when.
Right now I'm doing this remix I did for Kim called "Wake Up Stand Up." At 9, the 12-inch I'm getting ready to put out on at 9, and probably the NDATL, the 25, the Comedic Jazz.
Mhm.
Yeah, they work every time.
And how is it these days? Like being late in the club, traveling. Is it getting harder?
No, it doesn't really get harder. So this trip right here, I'm gone away from home for like the whole month. That's the hard part, is just being gone. Because in the downtime, you're just hanging out in the city for a couple of days. Sometimes it's great because you get to see the city. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, you want to be working, So just being gone for 30 days, it's like, okay, let's see how I feel about that. But yeah, no,
You're having a little.
doesn't make it harder. I mean, the parties, when they're good, they're great, and so yeah, you don't feel any kind of way about that.
You're having a little tour around Europe. You're going to Istanbul, Helsinki, and Berlin, I think.
Yes, from here, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already played Madrid and Paris.
And you're playing Panorama Bar.
I am.
So what are your previous experiences with?
It's
with
always
that
been
club?
great. So I played there it's probably my 4th time. It's always been cool. Like, the people have always been receptive. I don't find myself having to, get out of my character to play there. So yeah, I would totally enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it, definitely. And after I've been there a few times, you get more comfortable. You get more you kind of know where to go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Because it's actually been a while where I just kind of played once a year. I think now it's been about 3 years since I played.
You're also very fashion guy. You have a big collection of glasses.
I do.
And you're starting your own.
I am.
Tell me a little about that.
So yes, so people always see me with glasses, and that's just only because I have to wear glasses, so I need to see, and I just always hated having to wear the same glasses all the time. So I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna buy glasses like I buy shoes or shirts or whatever else. But with that, and people were like, oh wow, you guys always got on some dope glasses. So now, after a culmination, somebody was like, yo, you always wear so many dope glasses, you need to have some glasses of your own. It's like, okay. So I thought about it, and that's what we're working on. So look for the new Kai Eyewear 2020. Yeah,
Nice.
Yeah, we're going to make it happen.
Cool. I wish you a lot of luck with that.
Okay.
We'll
We'll have you a pair. We'll have you on a pair. I mean,
Thank you.
the nice bold you know,
I like
colors.
big glasses, yeah,
All right.
in colors.
All right.
So we're gonna see you tonight playing at Super Club.
Super Club.
Before that, you're gonna drop by to my show a bit.
Oh, yeah, right.
On the radio.
Okay, we got a schedule popping
Schedule.
up.
Hard time living in
Yeah.
Croatia, man. Do we play one more record for the end of the
Yeah, no
conversation?
No problem. Let's do it.
Dakle, večeras s početkom u 21, jel tak, Ilija? U 21, super klub, Katran, dođite Kai Alce uz Imogen Sound System i ko je večeras je Antonio? Ti. Ilija Rudman, Imogen Sound System i Kai Alce, večerašnji gost, 5. godišnjice Imogen Recordings. Sutra se opet družimo ovdje kod Ilije u studiju uz DJ Garta, koji je sutrašnja zvijezda večeri. Pozivam vas sve, pridružite nam se na oba dana ovog lijepog slavlja 5. rođendana Imogen Recordings etikete.